These amazing four panelists are actually wearing so many hats that I would definitely love themselves to introduce what is relevant in their profile to the topic. From my side, the introduction would be the next one. I have my favorite quote about blockchain. I think it comes from John Oliver. He said once that blockchain is everything that people do not know about computers combined with everything that people do not know about money. If I may add to John Oliver, sustainability is everything that people don't want to know. So my first question that would help you introduce your profiles is, how did you manage to combine sustainability with fintech? When did this convergence start in your respective careers? And is it a love story, a hate story, or is it still a bouquet and chocolates period? Let's start with Ettore, from you. Do you have a mic that works? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, let me start with a professional.
Please talk to the mic.
I speak with the mic.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, professional approach is, I would like to point out two profiles. So the concept of sustainability that you said, because I love it. Yes, I love sustainability, but we have a path that is toward us and forward us, and we have to understand where and how is leading to a change. So in this regard, I would like to express a very short idea about sustainability, in the sense that you said sustainability is something that we don't understand clearly. Yes,
not we, but people. Well.
Yeah. Yes, I agree with you, but we have to consider as well that nowadays sustainability is considered something related not just to environment. That's what I want to clarify, because we say always environment, nature, and so forth. Yeah, that's true, but it's as well very important to consider two other profiles. The first one is social, the society, and the second one is the governance. We spoke before about ESG, so always consider three profiles: nature, society, and governance. Why it's important? Because in this way, we can regulate, the game of word, regulation in a certain way that is considering these three features of sustainability. The second profile that I want to consider is the idea of green finance. We are speaking about green finance now in this panel. So green finance is not something heterodox or something that is completely away from the traditional finance, but it's a complex of traditional tools that we can imply and use with a target, with an objective that is nature, society, and governance of nature and society. So that's something that I would like to say. And when you speak about blockchain, because Oliver said something as well about it, as you suggested, for sure blockchain is a tool, it's a new tool, but we can use this new tool not just for traditional finance, as I was saying before, but as well for the green finance. And that's a very important profile. So later, when I will speak a little bit more, I will pass the... Don't worry, yes, it's not a lecture, you know. So I'm always...
As you may have understood, Ettore here is like the ordered part of the panel.
Absolutely. So. I try to be.
Regulators
yes,
and regulations.
The regulation will be very important. That's what I want to say.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's move to Ian.
Great. I just want to, when I start, say to you guys that I'm not doing ESG anymore or sustainability. I used to do it. I was at Standard Bank, the biggest bank in Africa, for 28 years. So my experience was more from an African perspective. I've now joined TokenVest, and there we are looking at what Deepa mentioned yesterday, which is funds, property, and commodities. But at Standard Bank, for me, it was a love story. The first time that I looked at sustainability in DLT, I was the head of blockchain there, was when we did a use case with NASA and MIT, a collaboration, where we used the Mars project NASA findings to basically grow bricks out of necessity for people in Africa that didn't have houses, and we used that same mushrooms to create a smoothie that underfed people in Africa. And a lot of people talk, over the last 2 days, I've heard banking the unbanked, serving, but no one really functioned at the grassroots level. Actually have. I wanted to make it very quick, and now it's going to take a little bit longer. But anyway, no one really focused at those points. And from the start, the bank, MIT, we had the chief physicist, they wanted to put this on blockchain, on DLT, because we wanted to make it extremely efficient. And when you do food, you want to track and trace and make sure that the food, people, no one's going to die. So that for me was extremely exciting. And that whole project evolved to enable crowdfunding where you could buy a brick. And we built it up to a certain stage. And the mushrooms, actually, it was done in Namibia. Their food was an alien tree in Namibia that drinks the water. Namibia is a very dry country. So it had the byproducts of this social. You mentioned 3 things: environment, social, and governance. So the environment benefited from this use case. Socially, we looked after people. And it was all governed on a DLT where you could track and trace every single mushroom. And you could see how much food you gave to people. And we actually built houses for people. I can show you YouTube videos that MIT did, where the bricks are such good quality that it can't even burn. But anyway, that's a quick introduction. That's my love story. But there's also another story that I'll touch on later.
So much.
I continue. All right. I think it is a love story for me as well. A love story that started with sustainability first. Blockchain came later. So I guess it was the fling, but then it stuck. Polygamous, maybe. So I was working on sustainability disclosures and reporting. Nikhil mentioned a moment ago Dodd-Frank Act, which had a section on conflict minerals. So we were doing a lot of non-financial reporting analysis on Dodd-Frank, on CATISCA, California Transparency and Supply Chains Act. Then the EU had the NFRD, the CSRD, and we just saw this wave of non-financial reports that they were very green, very colorful, with pictures of plants, but often the content was not good. So we developed some scientific methodologies to try to score and evaluate which ones were good, which ones were bad. Companies really liked that. Some of them didn't, but we did some naming and shaming. And that was great. Although reporting is not the whole part of the story, because on top of reporting, you also need impact. We were just doing reporting back then, and that meant also that companies with resources to do good reporting were not necessarily having that good an impact. Then I ended up moving to UCL and then the Science Foundation, where we did a lot of work on impact as well. We started doing work on making carbon markets better, more auditable, and that's the DLT Earth initiative we did. Also measuring the impact of blockchain technology, developing footprint, carbon footprint, water footprint, land footprint metrics for crypto, because otherwise it is a bit ironic trying to use blockchain to fix carbon markets, but what is the carbon footprint of blockchain itself? So we're doing that work, and well, last year, this year, MiCA is coming around. MiCA actually brought us back to reporting because it's requiring disclosures, white papers with sustainability data for the crypto. So using this, again, science-based metrics we developed, we are also trying to help the industry. We have this initiative, the MiCA Crypto Alliance, that we're using to try to elevate the ecosystem, really. So from reporting to impact, back to reporting, and I guess it's been a love story with sustainability, science, and blockchain.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Last but not least, Namir.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So the love story for us is, I have two hats for that. The first hat is, of course, the chairman of the Middle East and North Africa Fintech Association. In that, we started almost a year and a half ago the Sustainable Fintech Alliance in partnership with the Ministry of Climate Change and Environment of UAE, where we realized that although there is interest when it comes to sustainability, but there's lack of understanding of what really sustainability is when it comes to implementation. So we did a few initiatives, which is the Sustainable FinTech Pledge, which has been rolled out with some of the largest players like Meta, these and many others being a part of it. On top of that, we also then gave scholarships worth $150,000 in partnership with the Financial Authority for almost 30 plus students. So we realized that, you know, it's important to educate when it comes to sustainability, and then we're launching a toolkit as well with the ministry as well in the next couple of weeks. The second hat that I wear is the founder of FinTech, which is focused on sustainability, primarily building the rails for global climate action. The reason why we really went towards sustainability is, for me, impact is, and for us, the entire team, impact is really important. And impact is spread across 17 SDGs, right? And on top of that, the fundamental problem that we face today when it comes to sustainability is, does anyone know how many emissions do we produce every single year? 51 billion tons of emission is what we produce every single year. We already have 1.5 trillion tons of emissions already in the atmosphere. There's a problem that we all have to solve. Carbon emissions is a product of consumption. Consumption is a product of spending. And spending is eventually a product of payments, be that corporate or retail. That is what we solve through our infrastructure at FILS. And this is how we embedded it.
Thank you so much. So I think we have the whole supply chain of ESG solutions here present on stage. I will just add that I have been community enabler for ESG integration and bridging communities of blockchain and sustainability together. And I was always promoting blockchain community because I think it has a very important feature that they actually act pretty fast. And sustainability definitely has issues with timing, because the numbers that you have just shared, it's not just every year. It's actually 1 year takes us back 10 years at least. So this is just one issue, but there are definitely others related to distribution of resources, distribution of funds, selection of projects. And being always under the pressure to make this selection, this gets even more complicated. So from your perspective, Ettore, you are a professor, so you have, no, you don't have time, but you have, you have this amazing platform to think about regulating regulations. So what do you think are the current challenges in creating this ecosystem, creating this convergence between fintech and sustainability? And how do you handle this in your capacity?
So that's a very great question. So thank you for that, because it allows us to think about this profile. So when we speak about fintech, especially nowadays, so in a global world, we are in Dubai, so one of the global hub of finance and so for real estate and so forth. So we have to think always internationally. So for sure, the step that we have to consider always when we speak about finance and so forth is an international approach. So a global approach, I know it's very difficult. As well, yesterday we spoke about the difficulties of reaching these points, this feature, but we can work, especially with general organizations, so global organization for sure, but as well giving, that's a very important profile, because we always consider a top-down approach. So the organization is giving us the way to how to act, how to operate, and so forth. But it's very important as well the bottom-up approach. So the education, the knowledge. I don't speak just because I'm a lawyer and professor. I would like to underline one profile that I didn't say about my love for sustainability. So I started one of the first courses in Europe in a public university on sustainability, because the University of Florence has the first course in Europe, as far as I know, of sustainable enterprises law. So that is something, it was in 2019.
How many students have passed through the course?
Approximately 500. So
amazing.
A huge number, I have to say. So that's very important. So to give knowledge, to give expertise, basic expertise that they can be increased day by day. And just in this way, we can create a philosophy, a way of thinking of the people. And we can change in reality the situation, not just speaking and with a blah blah, just a talk. So for sure, an international approach, knowledge approach, so bottom up, and to try as well to give more accountability, not liability. That is completely different, because accountability is something that is involving us as a person. Liability is a sanction. So we should think as well in terms of accountability. So we have to be responsible for ourselves, for our behavior. I don't want to appear like a Gandhi guy that is speaking like a priest. But
you're a professor.
yes, but I try to give you my ideas that are not just theoretical, I think, but they can be applied. And we are probably in a good path. I think so.
But definitely accountability is related to education, and education is basis of everything, the cornerstone of the industry. Because if we want to be ambitious, we also need human resources and education. Have you seen dynamics through the years that since you've launched the course, dynamics of more people interested in the course?
Yes, absolutely. So, for example, something that is giving me a lot of happiness is the fact that some of my students went, for example, to United States, to Berkeley, for studying technology, for studying sustainability and so forth. And that's very, very nice. To Cambridge as well, the Institute for Sustainability. And that's something like, professionally, is very important for me. For the world, in my humble, very tiny world, what I can do for the world, but especially for the future generation. And what I would like to point out, sorry, then I'll pass. Ian, don't hate me, please.
I'm happy.
I know that you are. So, is the problem of greenwashing that we have to consider always. So, because we have always the profile of regulation, the EU taxonomy and so forth, but we have to consider as well this profile that we, for example, in these days, I didn't hear this word so much, greenwashing. So, that's something that we have to consider. So, I don't want to be a bomb guy as well, but yeah.
Can you please pass the microphone to Juan, though? I actually wanted to base the question on what you've said, education, knowledge being the base of the chain that is being built after that. And you've been so much involved into bridging science circles with the institutions, business associations. Can you tell us a little bit about the challenges of this dialogue, of creating this united ecosystem, making sure that the voices are balanced and the knowledge is balanced?
Yeah, absolutely. So the problem is that we are bridging exactly multiple fields, and collecting the expertise in all of these fields is difficult. So maybe parties are very good in their own domain, but when you take them outside of it, things start to get mushy. So take the regulators. The regulators sometimes could understand the technology a bit better. They are doing incredible efforts sometimes, and applause for that. But at the same time, the timeline is very short. It's a technology that is evolving very quickly. We see now in MiCA, for instance, Ettore, you're talking about regulation, right? MiCA has climate indicators for crypto requiring Scope 3 emissions disclosures. Scope 3 emissions are emissions of organizations, right, that are indirectly in their upstream or downstream flows. What is the organization that is responsible in a crypto system? Would it be the Ethereum Foundation for Ethereum? If you're going to the XRP ledger, are you going to go after the Scope 3 emissions of Ripple, XRP Labs, XRP Foundation, XRP Commons? Like, where do you stop, right? I don't think many of these things have even been thought out. So that is an issue. At the same time, then we have the issue of expertise in climate science. When we see cryptos issuing statements that they are carbon neutral or carbon negative, or issuing sustainability reports, what methodology they are following to say that? Maybe it's some internal researcher, or maybe somebody from the marketing team ran some numbers, did some back of the envelope calculations, but how do we actually get things to be comparable? And then we have the issue of carbon markets. So in carbon markets, there's lots of projects trying to use blockchain technology to make, this market that is a market that is being plagued with controversy a bit more reliable and transparent. But there are issues of climate methodologies, how you do the carbon accounting in all of these projects, that makes things quite complicated, and it's not always the case that everybody understands that, and this lack of understanding is preventing the market from scaling. What we are trying to do is doing the research, publishing it, trying to communicate this to the industry, that's why we formed the Alliance, but also trying to work directly with regulators who are very open, also in fairness to them, to engaging with the scientific community, to understand what they need and what they want to learn. So that's what we do.
Amazing, yeah. I think you highlighted very important problems of bridging and of knowledge that is reflected in sometimes a marketing decoration that basically represents lack of real implementation. Yeah, and I definitely want your take on the corporate interpretation and implementation of this knowledge and regulated regulations that we've been talking about. On the side of compliance, what is the approach that you've encountered while working in corporate world?
So in the corporate world, the existing traditional solutions is quite embedded. And I want to talk about Africa specifically because there's a lot of mines. You know, the guys that's actually causing most of the emissions are not really educated and they don't really understand what the implications are. And if they are in this space, in the carbon credit space or offsetting space, they actually want to make sure that where they do exceed these emissions, that they can offset it in a way. So there was trading desks, typically, historically, where the guys went and bought these credits, but you couldn't always be sure that these are real offsets, actually. Because some people just created these offsets out of thin air. From a positive side, just to related to compliance.
So it's basically a deep fake.
Yeah. So from a compliance perspective, I worked with Greg, that's standing there in West, from Madeira, and what I liked what they did, they put the whole ecosystem to address this on a DLT. So from the projects that was listed to reduce the emissions, how those projects performed, the reporting to the regulator was all basically automated on one network, linked to the funding, so they had the bonds as well as green forwards. I was in the Treasury Department, so that was, for me, was a complete end-to-end solution. And when you look at it, you can see when someone comes with a green project, and if I use the terminology wrong from the academic perspective, this is a banker's view. So when you look at a green project that Standard Bank funded, it was very important for us that say you're going to reduce your emissions by 60%. I know it's very optimistic, but if you didn't hit that target, your bond would have automatically repriced and you would have been penalized, right? I like that. And then if you meet your targets, the bond's pricing will be reduced. And the biggest benefit for me, addressing knowledge, is the fact that the reporting capability that was attached to this ecosystem actually enabled you to provide reports to the government and also internally for the projects. You know, but it's like a total ecosystem. It's a collaborative effort. And the main thing that for me is important is bringing all the relevant parties on the same platform. Typically, when we use DLT solutions in the bank, we solved part of the problem because we didn't, you know that old quote, you created a hammer, you're looking for a nail. So a lot of the DLT solutions we went to our customers with, they said to us, we don't need this. But when we asked them what to solve in the payment process order, they said, fix this side for me, I worry about that. And I think this platform sets the scene for adoption. The only thing that disappoints me, I don't think the regulations is punitive enough to force people to really consider. And I'm not skeptical, I'm negative in a way about it because there's no urgency. Remember when I spoke about that social use case where Africans innovate out of necessity? There's no necessity for people to do this. And that's how I feel about sustainability. It just continues and no one's really taking this serious.
Namir, you're dealing with a difficult region because it's complicated in many ways it's very vibrant, developing. It is also traditionally not associated with sustainability. So how would you comment on what Ian just mentioned, and what are the ways that you are handling it in your capacity? I know that it's in 2022, right, that you have started the Sustainability Fintech initiative. Was it related with some particular trends that you see in the region, with the actors becoming more aware and more involved?
Right. So I think the region, similar to many other industries globally, how the region has progressed when it comes to sustainability is better than any other market outside the region as well. And some might differ with me, and I'll back it up with a few things. First of all, yes, we may not have a very robust framework similar to what EU has, but this region is known to always leapfrog. Right? So we leapfrog in digital assets. Therefore, the region will leapfrog when it comes to sustainability and reporting and many others as well, which is going to be primarily launched in the coming first half of the next year. So there's a leapfrogging opportunity ahead when it comes to this. Second is, the region itself has a very aggressive agenda of achieving carbon neutrality. So we have around, some countries have a target of 2050, some countries may have a target of 2040, and many others. However, there are many companies that are operating in our region that are headquartered, let's say, outside the region where there are very strong requirements already. Therefore, those requirements then transcend into the business operations over here. Therefore, it is required for them to take action. So there are the couple of layers over here. One is the push from the government, which is there. Second, if there is no regulatory push, then there is the organizational board level push, where today a bank would have their own sustainability strategy. So if you look at it the way aggressively, in our region, the banks are investing into green initiatives is significant. Similarly, every bank today, I mean, we are working with almost 105 plus banks within our network, but around 13 banks that are actively launching new products with us shows that there is strong interest. Third, if there is no, let's say, board level push as well, then there is, of course, the consumer adoption push, where the consumers are more aware. Now, consumers' loyalty switch today towards those organizations that are more impact or sustainability focused itself. Now, the question may be, well, people in the region are not really concerned about it. Well, then you connect the behavioral analysis that the majority of the population of the region is young, right? And they are focused towards impact. So we have seen this solid, I would say, movement when it comes to the region, when it comes to regulatory push, and also when it comes to ensuring that the organizations are delivering some level of impact. If you go to GITEX, let's go to GITEX today, you would see half of the governmental organizations focusing aggressively on sustainability. That shows you that there is going to be a leapfrog moment. In UAE, we had the only regulated exchange for carbon markets, and there are more coming as well. They're setting up. So these are, and we may be slow to come up with a very strong framework, but again, I would emphasize on the point that this region will leapfrog.
I totally agree, and I honestly think that you may be ahead of so many other regions who are considered veterans in sustainability field, just because you have this human factor and this synergy between different actors.
Just to add on to this, sustainability, as mentioned earlier on, has a very strong connectivity to social, and the region, the values in the region, are extremely strong when it comes to social impact itself. And this drives this top down.
As we only have time till the sun touches Juan, so I would propose the last question, and then please think of yours as well, with a bit of outlook. I would love you to reflect on the distribution of all the resources that you have just mentioned in a sustainable way, so that we scale the solutions that blockchain, fintech, and other tech is bringing to the sustainable development and ESG goals consistently through different industries and consistently through different regions, continents. Ian, you've been talking about Africa. So what would be your outlook, ideal outlook, and what are the solutions that need to be implemented now so that this development is scaling accordingly?
Well, I think Africa is focused on sustainability and they're taking it very serious. The question for me is the movement from traditional technology into DLT. That's the point that I want to make. So it's not that people are not focused on it. It's just very difficult to move them from the existing rails and technologies onto DLT because they don't really see the benefit. I just want to position that very clearly.
What is benefit?
The benefit of the transparency. Remember, if you look at carbon, that what I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of deep fakes. So the benefit is that you have that stamp that says this is really, when it's immutable and it's on a ledger. Remember that counting, everything becomes simple, and the transparency is there that you know this is really reducing emissions, if you know what I'm trying to say. There's a guarantee. Because multiple parties actually validate that that is true. So I think that's the one benefit for me. There's a lot of...
But is it the most motivating benefit?
No.
Corporate world is managed by
the most
ideas on revenue, right? So this is business.
Remember, sustainability is not always about revenue. Social is not about revenue. That's the examples we mentioned in the beginning. That's why the push is so important. But I don't think, I'm going to answer your question, I think there needs to be a more thorough push to get people to deliver quicker on managing those emissions, right? There's penalties, all those kind of things. Even the penalties today, if you think about it. I don't want to start another conversation, the sun's moving, but a lot of the companies that make lots of money, do they really care about those taxes they pay? And then if you look in Africa and across the world, what are those taxes and penalties actually used for at the end of the day? Is it to pay government official salaries, or is it really applied to work on other projects that reduce emissions? So I think it's a bad circle. I'm not a pessimist, but I've thought about these things multiple times. And
Realist.
Yeah, a realist.
Who wants to take on this? Juan?
I want to, yes. No, I will be a bit more optimistic. I would say not only that more aggressive penalties are not only, and may not be the only way, but also on their own they can't achieve more than is currently being achieved, because the way I see it, the problem is not on penalties, and I understand you see that, because you probably have seen a lot of people just refusing to do the job, right, like irrationally. I understand that, but probably like my perspective is the market is not developed enough, even using technology, just using blockchain technology, wrapping a carbon offset in a token is not enough. I have bought carbon offsets myself and been sent a PDF after paying with a Stripe link. The PDF had a QR code and I could see the hash in the blockchain. But what do I know of what happened before that? There's methodologies that were created at the time of the Kyoto Protocol, methodologies from the Paris Agreement, methodologies that have been improved upon, and a ton of carbon under one methodology is not equal to a ton of carbon under another methodology. There should be some way of converting, and just having like isolated marketplaces where you can buy offsets at their face value is a problem. It creates a problem of convertibility and therefore of scalability. That's why many parties prefer carbon credits and not carbon offsets, because a ton of carbon is a ton of carbon is a ton of carbon. It is what it is. So more penalties without fixing that problem, I don't see how that's going to work. But I think we can solve it. Probably, and interestingly, I think it does come through the blockchain side of things. My experience also working with the Hedera Guardian has been that actually DeFi principles being applied to these offsets, if you can get the entire system, the entire value chain, somehow mapped digitally and comparably, you can then establish like exchange rates between different quality of credits. I think that would let us scale.
I just quickly want to answer.
We can continue this at the coffee break, but let's to regulate or not to regulate, to penalize or not to penalize.
Yeah. So no, may I add something related to what you said before? So you said how to enhance regulation,
Scalability,
yes.
accountability.
One profile, technology. So for sure, the artificial intelligence yield spoke about it before. So issues for sure, pros and cons, but technology can help us, especially in selecting data, for example, and that leads to transparency, better regulation and support. So first profile, also if biases are always involved, and then I would like to point out this profile and I will shut up. So we spoke about long-termism. Yeah, long-termism. Very interesting profile, for sure related to sustainability, green finance and so forth. But as well here we have to distinguish because we have a green termism, a long-termism in financial terms. So for sure, green finance is in this direction, not short-termism. But we have to consider as well a sociological profile, because if I say, I prefer to invest and sacrifice 700 million people that are starving, but looking at the future, so in 25, 50, 100 years, what I have to sacrifice? These people, long-termism, rather short-termism, or shall I look ahead, so 100 years ahead, so long-termism. So we have to distinguish long-termism financial profile by the sociological and economic profile.
I think it's a great idea for a poll on Twitter. Let's
Just have a few points.
please.
It was good listening to everyone, and I think the important aspect is, well, you are trying to solve this global problem. There will be, of course, penalties, and there should be penalties, of course, if you're trying to achieve something. Otherwise, the EU ETS would never be the successful one. Second, the important aspect where we all need to focus on is, as mentioned by Juan as well, that you need to have a complete value chain that you're looking at, which means what's the infrastructure that we have established in order to achieve scale. Without infrastructure, carbon markets and sustainability is going to fall flat on its face. We have seen platforms that come and tokenize carbon credits, but where's the liquidity? I mean, I can pick up 10 companies right now without liquidity in the tokenizing carbon credits, right? For that, what is the distribution that how are you solving the liquidity problem in order to fund this important vehicle? Which requires you to ensure that the retail systems, the distribution when it comes to corporates, that the infrastructure is catering to that. So that's my only single practical point based on, since we're executing it with multiple players, infrastructure is the focus that we need to focus on.
I think these are amazing guidelines for the future. Do we have time for one question? Yes, the boss says yes. Please. Ian, but come here.
That's right. Thank you. I want to start with an example and then apply it to ESG. In Swahili countries, Kenya, Tanzania, and so forth, we are called the Wazungu. Wazungu, you probably know what that means, is aimless wanderers. We in the West come off the plane and we apply our Western models to what is going on there, and for some reason they don't work. They just fail. Another way of thinking about this is the acronym WEIRD. Western, educated, industrialized, rich, democratic. We are all weird. And that applies to about 4% of the population of the planet. This became important because somebody discovered that practically all of the psychological papers were weird and therefore kind of useless to the rest of the world. Now, to what extent is ESG plagued by the fact that we can't get out of our mindset and we might be the wrong people for that very topic?
So thank you for the question, Ian, right? Thank you for the question, Ian. Well, I would focus on the S of ESG, so society. So if you grow a society that is a sane society, a healthy society in terms of morality, knowledge, and so forth, for sure you can implement policies that are that are much better and much more microprudentially, I'm sorry if I use this word, microprudentially, functional to that society at that world. They are not imposed. So it's always the same approach, top down, bottom up. That's a bottom up approach, the one that you are suggesting. But what is the key of change? So the solving problem, knowledge, education. But we need time. That's why. You can tell me, you can tell me, but education is Western education. Yes, it's true, it's Western education, but we can apply this Western education to local situation, and African nations and so forth, and to have an implementation that is correct. That's the idea. So the S of ESG, to be short. Yeah.
Very quickly, a follow-up, just focusing on the example of carbon markets specifically. Weirdness, if you want, is a very pervasive problem. I'm not going to delve into the entire mindset problem, but just a very concrete example that you can find is that there may be a project developer sequestering carbon in somewhere in Africa, and then the development of the project, the amounts of tons of carbon sequestered, they need to be verified. So where does the know-how and who verifies this? Well, often people are flown from Germany to do that. So obviously that's a problem, and it's contradictory, and it just doesn't look or sound good. So the problem is there. Now, obviously there are ways to improve. It's not also that the Global South speaks a completely different language in terms of global problems. Personally, I am from the Global South myself. I'm from Argentina. For us also, a ton of carbon is a ton of carbon at the end of the day as well. But certainly, one of the things we are doing with, for instance, this DLT Earth program, we have a fellows program where we want the fellows to be from the Global South. And they should develop the science based on local conditions, not us.
Global issues should have global impact and global solutions. I suggest we continue Q&A during the coffee break, but the official invitation is coming from the Master of Ceremonies.
Thank you very much, panel. I'm sure the guests will have many questions for you. Please join me in applauding.